Welcome to Drafting Out Loud for today's episode of Underdog Market Movers. On today's episode, we're going to change things up a bit. We're going to look at the risers and try to predict if they'll continue to rise and where they could potentially rise to if we had much more time before the draft that we can kind of justify if we should be taking these players or not. We're going to look at the fallers very briefly and talk about one faller that's no longer on the list. And we're going to ignore the platform values. Let's be honest, there's not much there on Underdog as far as platform values go. Let's jump into it. Here are the Underdog risers. The first one is Dontavian Wicks. He's going at 187 right now. He's up 15% for the week so far. If we go and look at the ADPs and we kind of scroll down and see where Dontavian Wicks is at, he is going right before Tank Dell, right after Christian Kirk. If you ask me, I could see Dontavian Wicks continuing to rise up this board right now with the assumption that he's the number 2 wide receiver on Philadelphia. Now, if Philly does draft a wide receiver early in the draft, that could change things up. Or, of course, if they don't trade A.J. Brown, that could change things up as well. But that's more than a month away before that trade is expected to happen. I could definitely justify Dontavian Wicks rising up this board easily into the middle of the 170s. And then depending on what happens in Detroit, you could see him going ahead of Isaac Tesla or ahead of A.D. Mitchell, depending on what happens with the Jets. And so you could see him going in the early 170s potentially. There are rumors of Detroit and the Jets either drafting or signing someone, and that could make these players not as attractive picks at these prices. So I think Wicks is definitely a buy, and if you wanted to, you could easily draft him ahead of some of these players right now. If you ask me, considering there's only a week left before the draft, he's not going to get there before the week. And of course, once the draft happens, things could change and maybe he's not a good pick anymore. But that's my opinion right now with what we got. Next up, Devonta Smith. Devonta Smith, I think, is a buy. Again, assuming there is a trade. We're talking about him being at pick number, where is he here? Pick number, we can find it. There he is, 37. Now, the problem here I have with Devonta Smith here with only, again, a week before the draft is while drafting him here, I think you're still getting a value, a closing line value, assuming that A.J. Brown gets traded. The problem is that if you draft him earlier, you're either just swapping a third rounder for a fourth rounder, so you're kind of just making the same team with two different players in a lot of cases, or if you pull him up much more earlier and earlier in the third round, you're probably losing a lot of that closing line value. So unfortunately, while I think he still is a riser, I think he's still someone you want to target if you want to get closing line value on the entire draft process before, game one, basically. I don't think that you're going to get as much out of it now based on where he's at on the board. So if he falls, I think you're probably scooping him every time. But if he doesn't fall, it's hard to justify drafting him earlier and getting the biggest bang for your buck on that advantage against more of like a swap of players. David Montgomery at 52, it's hard to see him rising too much more. He's cleared out all the value when it comes to him versus his draft his ADP on DK. He's still going slightly later on Underdog, so you could see him rise up a pick or two, but it's hard to see him get drafted much more. If we were to look again at our ADPs here, you can see the next person he's got to clear as far as running backs go is Trevion Henderson at 47.4. I guess you could see Trevion's start to fall a little bit to kind of get closer to the ADP value on DraftKings for Trevion Henderson because he's going later on DraftKings. And then you can see David Montgomery rise up a little bit. So you can see him maybe pass Trevion Henderson. But then after that, he's got to pass Bucky Irving. He is falling rapidly, but it's hard to see David Montgomery rise a whole ton from here. He's just not that exciting of a pick, if you ask me, although I know there are plenty of other people that are interested in him. DJ Moore at pick 50. You could see him rising up the board potentially, mainly to close that gap between Underdog and DraftKings. You're talking between 42 and 50. You're talking about the middle of the fourth round to the beginning of the fifth round, essentially. So you can kind of see this close some. Similar thing to what's going on with Devonta Smith, though, in that are you just swapping players at that point in time? Maybe getting some closing line ADP if you get him where he's at, but if you're trying to overdraft him and get him earlier, you're kind of just swapping picks and you're not getting the biggest bang for your buck. Matthew Golden, he's currently going at 117, and I could see this continue to rise just because of the trade of Dontavian Wicks. I'm not going to try to justify it with certain players, but you could see him. I mean, we'll just go to it really quick and take a look. 117. So you could see him rise. The problem is, it is hard to justify why he's rising over a lot of these players, if you ask me. So, if you want to play the market, maybe grab him. But it's hard to see him get over Josh Downs. It's hard to see him right now get over Xavier Worthy, depending on what the Chiefs do in the draft. So if you wanted to go above Xavier Worthy, that might make some sense if you're kind of betting on the Chiefs getting another pass catcher than Worthy's role kind of just diminishing even further. But he's probably in a good spot where he's at overall, but he will probably rise just due to the momentum, if you ask me. We're going to skip the first rounders. J.K. Dobbins at 94. He's now surpassed like a big pocket of QBs, which I think was the tough thing that he had to do. He's done it now. And I've actually found myself taking him now when I wasn't taking him just like a week ago, that much because let's kind of pull up the QBs with this here and take a look. We can see here that here's that pit pocket of QBs: Purdy, Nix, Stafford, Goff, Murray, Love. He's passed up that entire pocket now. And now he's here at 94. I kind of expect him to keep on moving. Why wouldn't he pass up Kyle Monangai? You could even justify him passing up Rico Dowdle potentially. Um, if we're kind of saying that like Dobbins and RJ Harvey are a similar bet to like uh, Dowdle and Warren. So you could see kind of like Dowdle maybe staying put. You could see Warren falling back a bit. You could see J.K. Dobbins rising up a bit. And you could see where is he? RJ Harvey continue to fall a bit, depending on kind of what news we get, that kind of stuff. So I think J.K. Dobbins is probably a buy here, barring weird things happening in the draft. And I could see he's a buy partially because I just see him keep on moving up essentially because he's kind of broken past one pocket and he's might just kind of blow through the next one a bit. Omar Cooper Jr. at 130, we've talked about it. You can just find him going ahead of Higgins on Houston right now. Jaden Reed, we've talked about him as well. You can justify him rising up because people are going to want to stack him with Love. And where Love goes, you need either Reed to go higher or you need Love to fall for it to work. So I expect Reed to continue to rise up as well. And then these picks right here, we only got a couple minutes left. We want to make this quick. Chuba at 71. Let's see if we can look at him really quick here. We got Chuba at 71. Now the problem with actually we got Chuba and we have where are they? Let's find them really quick first. 71. We got Chuba here, and then we have Alex Pierce right here. They're on the risers list. I think the problem with them is that I don't see them rising a whole lot because if we throw in the quarterbacks, I think just the quarterbacks are better bets, right? Like we got a little bit earlier, Jaden Daniels, Joe Burrow. Then we got Hurts and Caleb Williams, who are going right after Alec Pierce. I feel like Hurts, Williams, Drake, May, they're all probably going to rise above Pierce, and I find it hard that Hubbard's going to get above them, especially before the draft. So I don't think that you're going to see much movement in those two anymore. They probably are where they are. The one that I'll say here that I kind of like is Vidal. I don't know how much he's going to rise or if he should rise, but I can tell you at 203, if he gets like a third down passing role and maybe even more than that, he might pay off better than a lot of these players ahead of him. You could see him definitely kind of like in this like 190 range, if you ask me. So that's some of my justifications and predictions on what might happen based on what's already happened. Let's take a look at the fallers. The faller not on the list that I thought was intriguing is Travis Hunter, no longer on the fallers list already. Um, I guess the news has got out that that was just the same old news instead of new news, and he has stopped dropping on the list. So if you were waiting for a further fall, I don't know if it's going to be there. And then here are our platform values. Parker Washington still losing more of his value week by week. So there we are. We got this in just over 10 minutes. Let me know what you thought about the way we went through these players, and see you on the next one. Peace.